Welcome to AFrame Lesson 4.4. In this video, we're going to explore how to add sound, which can have an amazing impact in immersing your user in the world. So let's get to it. Before we get started with some code, let me just kind of set the scenario of what we want to do. So this cylinder over here, we're going to pretend that it's a dog and we want it to bark. This box will be our car, and it's going to rev up every time we click on it. And this ball, eventually, it's going to, actually, I think it should work right now. It's going to bounce up and down. And every time it bounces on the floor, we want to make a clanking sound. So let's go back to our replit. So like we've done with a couple of other resources that we've introduced into our world, we have to preload them. And I already have it in my clipboard. So let's just discuss what I pasted into the asset manager. So we've created an audio element. This is just from HTML. We specified the source to be each of these files. We've given them an ID so we could reference them further down in our HTML or in the JavaScript. And we've also provided the additional attribute of preload equals auto. All right, so let's work with the dog first. So we're going to add an attribute to the dog, again, associating a sound with this cylinder. Let's specify the source to be the dog sound. And I'm also going to specify an additional attribute of loop is equal to true. So that way, once the sound is playing, it's just going to keep on playing. Now, you would think that this is enough to kind of have the sound play. But if you head on over to AFrame, the website, and look up sound, you'll see almost immediately you get a note saying that you need to interact with the browser before any sounds can play. Now, they also have a suggestion of using a third-party JavaScript library called Hello.js that can help to enable sounds to play, but we're going to use simply the notion that we're going to require this user to interact with our world in order for the sounds to play. All right, so let's go back. And let's go over to our script. And let's add an event listener to the window so when the person clicks on it. Now I'm going to take a slightly different approach in this video, where instead of doing add event listener, I'm simply going to use onClick just to show you that that is a capability of it. And I'm going to put it as a comment. This would be the replacement of doing something like this. So as you can see, using the onClick, it's definitely less typing. But again, some programmers prefer to use the add event listener instead of using this technique. Because this is something similar in other languages as well. All right, so now what we have to do is we have to actually play the sound. So let's go ahead and grab the dog from our scene. Get element by ID, and this was dog. And now what we can do is we can say dog, which is that AFrame component of the cylinder. It has an attribute called components, which has another attribute called sound, which then we can do play sound. Now, you might think, okay, where did you come up with this? I'm not a magician. If you go to the AFrame website and scroll down a little bit, you can see that there's a functionality here. And if you scroll down a little bit more, you can see they actually give you a sample code. So I definitely encourage you, whenever you're learning something, explore the documentation as much as you can. Try to get those code examples, and that's a good place to start learning. All right, so hopefully I typed everything. Component sound, and we're using play sound. Okay, so when we click on the window, the dog should be barking. So let's try that out. Okay, so I clicked on the window, and I'm not quite sure if you're getting the sensation, but since the cylinder's on the right side of us, I know from my perspective, I'm hearing it from my right speaker. Now this you should be able to sense in the video, which is as we get closer, the dog barking is louder. Up to the point that we're actually on top of it, and it's very loud. So again, that's the concept of the positional sound, that depending on where we are in the world, the sound's going to come from that direction. All right, so now let's work on the car. And let me close that out. All right, so let's go back to the HTML. Let's do something similar where for the car, we're going to specify the sound attribute. In this case, we're using the car sound. And I'm going to specify it to be false. That way, we click on the car once, the car kind of revs up, starts get ready to go, and then it stops. Hopefully your car doesn't act like that, but all right, so let's go here. Let's do something similar. Let's go grab the car. And I'm also going to take that same approach of doing car on click. Again, instead of doing the longer, more explicit add event listener. And now, because the car is part of the event listener, I could take this approach, no pun intended, of using the word this, and then components.sound.play sound. You could have also specified car, since the car is a variable that's available to everybody in the JavaScript. Okay, that should be enough so that when we click on the car, the sound plays. So let's look at the page again. And let's go. You can see, you can kind of hear the dog slow barking as I clicked on the page. So I clicked on the car, and notice that as I get closer, the car sound gets louder, and as I move further away, I'm going to try to move a lot away. But it looks like I got closer to the dog, so let me get to some neutral spot further away so we could talk a little bit. Hopefully the other thing you also notice is that once the car played once, I'm going to get close to the car. It's no longer playing. That's that loop equals false attribute. All right, so for the next part, let's add some sound to the ball as it bounces. And I'm going to disable that dog barking. Much like in real life, the dog barking can be very annoying. And while I'm here, I'm also going to disable the car just in case we accidentally click on it, so we can focus just on the ball. And let me close that out. Okay, so the ball is dynamically created through JavaScript. We have a class for it. But honestly, we have to do the exact same steps we did on the HTML, which is we have to associate a sound attribute with that source with this sphere. And I think I have that code already here, just to save ourselves a little bit of time. Okay, so again, this translates identical to what we did on the HTML side. So now we have a sound associated with the sphere, but we still have to play it. And what we're going to do is we're going to play it so every time it hits the floor. So we're going to add the if statement that says if this dot y is less than 1. We're going to say this. And again, this is going to be a little bit different than what we did with the car, where we said this components, only because of the structure of it. Again, this was the AFrame component. But inside the class, the AFrame component is here, stored in this variable of this.object. So we have to do this.object, then do components, sound, and then play sound. So again, this is part of an animation where the ball oscillates up and down between these two y values. But every time it hits the floor, we're going to play a sound. So let's check that out. And there you go. So hopefully you can kind of see that every time it reaches the bottom, the floor, it plays the clank sound. All right, so let's go back to our presentation and let's review what we've done. All right, so in this video, we saw we can add sound to our world to, again, add another dimension that has been missing in the last 4 units. Again, in the real world, again, sound offers information. It could be used for entertainment. The one thing I will caution you with sound, don't overwhelm the user with a lot of sounds. You can also control the volume, and that's an additional attribute that you could provide to the sound attribute. The positional sound gives us the ability to kind of move around our world and sense where the sound is coming from. The process required a couple of steps of preloading the sounds, associating the sounds with a particular component, and then also requiring a little bit of JavaScript to actually play the sound. Again, it's a couple of steps, but the value that you get from adding sound to your world is amazing. So hopefully you're excited about incorporating this into your worlds. Enjoy.